I'm really honored today that we can host the ambassador of Ireland, His Excellency Adrian Farrell, who in the best Irish tradition and Irish hospitality even offered the lunch that we just had downstairs. It was really nice, very enjoyable. The proof that was very enjoyable is the fact that this 30 minutes somehow disappeared. Sometimes, if things are bad, they drag. Time drags very long, but this time around it was really nice, and I thank you for that. So it's not just for having accepted my invitation, but offering this hospitality here. As we chatted a little bit, we are really looking forward to this presentation today. Ireland, from the Slovenian perspective, it's quite a distant country. We know it far less than our neighboring countries. We have certain ideas about Ireland. It has certain mythological capacities in our minds. We think, of course, of bands, beer, of green, great food. So it will be also important today to hear about the Irish perspective on the contemporary and the future challenges of the European Union. And maybe in contrast to what we heard from the two other countries whose ambassadors also took the stand here in this room, namely Germany and Spain, Ireland is a little bit more like Slovenia. It will probably count itself, even if, as the German ambassador said, there are no small, or there are just small member states in the European Union. There are some who still haven't found out that they're actually small from the global perspective. But in terms of size, in terms of demography, Ireland is among smaller member states. And I think from that perspective, this talk might be even more interesting. So that Slovenians who always or many times sort of pity ourselves that we are small and that this hinders us in achieving many things that could be achieved in the European Union. I think that Ireland stands as a proof that a huge progress can be made, and I'm sure that we'll also learn something about this from you, Your Excellency. Ireland had in the recent past occupied really important positions both in international relations at the Security Council of the United Nations, as well as your country chaired the Council of Europe, which is not the Council of Ministers, but and we all will be very pleased to hear from you now, Mr. Ambassador. Please, the floor is yours.
John, thank you so much. Everyone can hear me. Yeah, great. Well, sorry, I also have a little problem with my voice, so apologies on that if it's a bit weak. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thanks to Professor Albai for the invitation and a great introduction. Really what I'm going to do for the next 10-15 minutes, if you agree, is just give you a very quick, almost lightning introduction to Irish foreign policy. I won't really go into any detail on specific issues. I'll leave that for the Q&A afterwards. So I'm a career diplomat. I've been a diplomat for about 25 years now. I studied in Dublin and in Strasbourg in France. And my background is mainly languages, actually. So please just remember today, I'm not a lawyer, unlike you guys. So please don't get any expecting legal interpretations of questions. In my previous career to date, or my career to date, I've served in Ankara in Turkey, Cairo, Canberra in Australia. I was a long time in Berlin in Germany, and my last posting then was opening Ireland's new consulate in Texas, in the state capital, Austin. And now I'm delighted to be here in Ljubljana. But I'm also the Irish ambassador based in Ljubljana to Bosnia-Herzegovina as well. We don't have an embassy there this time. So look, as the professor said, despite our very different histories, the foreign policies of Ireland and Slovenia are quite similar. But there are some differences, and I'll talk to you about those in a few moments. And just to give you an introduction, it's worth contextualizing some of Ireland's foreign policy. I always think it's very, very useful. I'm exploring something about a new country, including its foreign policy, just to see how its history maybe has influenced its foreign policy. So I think the key thing to note about Ireland is in the last 60 years, we're independent for over 100 years now, but in the last 60 years especially, Ireland really stopped looking inward and began looking outward. Especially in terms of its economy. It opened itself up, especially, as I said, in economic terms. And now the Irish economy today is one of the most open and globalized in the world. Historically, there are millions and millions of people of Irish descent, who we call our diaspora, around the world, and in many cases these people support Ireland, and we engage with them quite extensively as part of our foreign policy. In fact, this week on Friday, I'll be celebrating Christmas with the Irish community here. So there's about 50 Irish people living in Slovenia. It's not the largest community, but still, it's not small either. And we also use Irish culture, which many of you probably know as well as a soft diplomatic tool. Now, as the professor said, Ireland, like Slovenia, is a small country, relatively small country. So you may know a little bit less about Ireland than other countries. So let me just, as I said, touch upon a few points very, very quickly, just to show you maybe how our foreign policy has been influenced by history. Clearly, we were occupied for many centuries, and that had quite bad consequences for Ireland. At different times, the language was crushed, people's religious freedoms were crushed, culture was crushed, all of these things, and people were essentially, for parts of that time, living, essentially paying to live off their own land. One of the big outcomes of that was emigration, and I'll talk again about that maybe a little bit later. And that immigration, people leaving the country, was essentially to flee poverty, discrimination, also religious persecution as well to some extent. Most of those who emigrated had no education, and that's an important point I'll come back to a little bit later. Education is quite a central part of Ireland's success story. And look, of course, there's always, I think, sometimes a misconception about our relationship with our next door neighbours, the UK. Relations are very, very good today. They have been for a long time. We got on very well. We have so many connections with each other. We have a shared common travel area. We can travel between each other's countries, all of these things as well. So relations today are very, very good. I mentioned a few times already just the diaspora. Ireland's population, about tens of millions of Americans today, in every census claim to have Irish heritage. So about 2 million people are estimated to have left Ireland in a very short period at the end of the 1840s. Ireland experienced a huge famine at that time. About 2 million of folks who died, and another 2 million left the country. The population at that time was about 8 million. And even today, we still haven't gone back up to that height of 8 million people. The population, I think, last year, for the first time in 150 years, hit 5 million. So we just above 5 million, I think, now. And as I said, Ireland then gained independence just over 100 years ago. So look, how has all of that shaped our foreign policy? You could say Ireland has a foreign policy that's anti-colonial, but I guess that was more applicable in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Irish people advocate very, very strongly for peace. I'm talking to a very young audience here, but I know many of you may have probably studied or may recall that Northern Ireland experienced huge amounts of violence from the late 1960s to the late 1990s. So this year we're celebrating a major milestone. It's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday, the Northern Ireland Belfast Peace Agreement. And I think that's really shaped our foreign policy. We know how terrorism and violence really brings nothing to people, so we're very strong proponents of peace around the world. We try to do our best with other countries as well. Irish people tend to be very, very pro-human rights. It's a core human rights, of course, like Slovenia is a core part of our foreign policy. We have historically experienced discrimination, and I think these days Irish people, as I said, are very protective and promote the rights of others as well, whatever these LGBT, whatever rights, all other groups. Since joining the League of Nations 100 years ago, which I won't go into that story, what happened there, but Ireland really has followed some key values in its foreign policy, as I said, human rights, principles of equality, respect, and dialogue. We also then, since the United Nations was formed, we've really become a strong adherent to international law, legal principles, rules, norms, and international institutions as well, which we have followed, but also in some respect we've also helped create and shape, and these embody our values. And for smaller countries like Ireland, but I think also I could speak for Slovenia in this regard, these international institutions, international law are very, very, very important because we are small countries, and I think that governs really how, to a great extent, how our foreign policy needs to be shaped on a longer rules-based system. Ireland is also a militarily neutral country. We're very supportive of international cooperation, especially overseas development aid, not only because while it is the right thing to do, but it also creates security and stability both internationally and also for regionally and also at home for our businesses, our people, our institutions as well. So, as was mentioned earlier, we had a seat on the UN Security. We were elected onto the UN Security Council for the 2021-2022 term. We finished about 12 months ago, 31st of December. And we really stood consistently, independently, and impartially, again, very strongly supporting international law, human rights, humanitarianism, and gender equality as well. We were absolutely delighted that Slovenia last June won the Security Council vote campaign. But I think what we were even more delighted about was that it won it so strongly, so impressively. And I think that really showed us the power of small and medium states, and also, you know, what those states are saying when they're voting for a country like Slovenia, and what Slovenia stands for as well. We helped Slovenia throughout the year on training and all sorts of different things. We've grown so close that we've even appointed an Irish diplomat to work in the Slovenian mission in New York for the duration of the Security Council. And of course, we're also supporting the Slovenian candidate for the International Criminal Court. So I spoke about the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. I'll speak very, very briefly about the other big anniversary for Ireland this year, the 50th anniversary of us joining the European Union, or the then European Economic Community. We were part of the first enlargement. Denmark and the UK joined, as well as Ireland. And you can see the different trajectory for different countries, how things have worked out for Ireland, but also the decision that British voters took several years ago on the European Union. For us, EU membership has been transformative. We've used our EU membership to the max, I think. The funding we received, the influence. I think one of the strongest elements of EU membership that EU membership gave Ireland was that it brought us from being a very, very small country to a much more influential country. We were sitting around the table with much larger countries and gave us a larger voice in international affairs. As many of you probably know, when we joined, we were by far the poorest member state. Today, we're one of the probably the more prosperous member states. We were a net beneficiary for quite some time. Today, Ireland is pleased to be a net contributor to the EU budget. We've worked very, very hard on our EU presidencies. We've got one coming up in just 2 years now, 2026. Again, hopefully we'll deliver a very, very good presidency. Because we came in on the first enlargement, Ireland tends to be very, very pro-enlargement as well. Obviously, you know, if countries fulfill the criteria as far as we're concerned, you know, we really should be advancing towards EU membership. I think it's good for all of us, regionally, locally, bilaterally, and in European context as well. The EU also helped us transform our economy. And again, this is, I keep mentioning it, but it's the small country issue. Access to, especially from the 1990s, to the European internal market gave our exporters massive new markets to explore, to open. And also the European Commission, as you know, on behalf of its member states, negotiates free trade agreements. We would probably never have been able to negotiate those complex agreements on our own as a small country, but we've really reaped the benefits of those as well. So I would just briefly mention, of course, it's not all been plain sailing, and there have been cases where when Ireland, as you may recall, you may have studied it, we've rejected EU treaties in the past. But ultimately, all of those treaties got through. We have a very strong referendum-based system in Ireland. And there are some questions on which we're still, you know, in terms of the future of Europe, there are some questions that are still open for us. For example, this very, very topical current debate on QMV. Slovenia has I think has made clear its position on that, where it wants to be. We have some reservations about QMV, but I think we're still considering all of the aspects. Clearly, I think just the final thing, one of the final things I'll say is just all briefly to touch upon Northern Ireland. It remains for us a very, very major issue. We really want to preserve the peace in Northern Ireland, and one of our focuses really consistently in our foreign policy is to deepen relations north-south between the north and south of Ireland. Some things are managed and marketed, for example, tourism policy, a public health policy on an all-island basis now. But we're also working to develop east-west relations between Ireland and the UK as well, doing everything we can to support peace and reconciliation and promote an active civil society as well in Northern Ireland. Brexit clearly complicated this somewhat, but I think things are hopefully back on track now with the Windsor framework that was agreed this year. So look, I think I might just finish off here because I've probably spoken too long already. But I think one of the other issues I would say, I mean, you know, I was asked to discuss some of the opportunities. I think I've mentioned some of those. I think the EU is still full of opportunity for us. We look forward to future enlargement, to a more peaceful European continent, obviously, hopefully, including in Ukraine. But also in the Western Balkans, in the sense that bringing more Western Balkans countries into the European Union as well. And I think I will probably, I'll probably leave it there because rather than talking more, I'll actually take questions before to see what you guys are most interested in answering. So again, very, very quick tour of Irish foreign policy. I probably left loads of things out, but I think time-wise, I don't want to. I'm looking at the clock. I don't want to bore you too much. Let's now have an opportunity for you to make questions or comments or whatever you'd like to do. And again, thanks very much for this opportunity.